Do you ever feel like you're on the edge of making a real change, but something keeps holding you back? You want it so badly, but commitment somehow slips through your fingers. What's really going on there? In today's episode, we're digging into this topic with Allan Misner, an ASM certified personal trainer, precision nutrition level 2 master health coach, and FAI certified functional aging specialist, a coach who's been exactly where you might be stuck and figured out how to bridge that gap between wanting change and actually committing to it. He's here to share how to tap into true motivation for commitment, putting yourself first, and finally making those goals stick. Welcome to the show, Allan.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Super. We're diving right in, and I want to know a time or times when you ignited your spark, when you had to recommit to your goals or commit to your health goals.
Well, I had made a decision that I was going to get myself back in shape because I was in really bad shape in my late 30s. And so I'd made the decision I was going to do something. And then for around 8 years, I worked at it. The gain, the loss, the try, the fail, the back and forth over and over, and literally found myself like 8 years later, like worse off than I started. And the spark actually came from my daughter. And we were on a phone call. She had just gotten into CrossFit. So she'd become a level 1 CrossFit coach. She was loving it. She had finally found her place, what she wanted to do with herself. And so she was just so excited. And she reminded me a lot of when I was her age. It's like, okay, I would have been doing these same things when I was her age, for sure. And so she called me up. We were talking. I was in Malaysia and she was in the States, and she said, "Daddy, would you come watch me do a CrossFit competition?" And it was like she kicked me in the gut. I was like, wait a minute. I didn't sign on to be a dad, to be a spectator in my daughter's life. I signed on to be a participant. But I obviously wasn't in a position where I could go do a CrossFit competition with her. But that's where I thought I was supposed to be. I was not supposed to be a spectator. Now, I'm a good dad. I did go watch, but that's not what I wanted to be doing with my daughter. That's not the experience that I wanted and not the life that I wanted. So it was at that moment I sat down and I said, okay, this is a hard thing. I mean, I know fixing yourself, losing weight, getting stronger, getting fit when you're over 40 is hard. But what makes this any harder than any of the other really hard things I've done during my life? Because I've had a lot of successes and I've worked really hard and done a lot of things. I was like, okay, what makes this harder? And it was that moment that I realized it isn't. What was different, and you used the word earlier, was I had never really committed to making the changes that were necessary to make that happen. Any other time I'd wanted to do something really hard, I had committed. And when I commit to something, I'm a bit fanatical, obsessive. That's the thing. That's the goal. That's the mission. Get it done no matter what. And I had never really done that here. And so I started kind of figuring out, okay, I've got to hire somebody, figure something out, get somebody involved here. But I started looking around and there was no one. There was no one training people over 40. There was, you either do the CrossFit stuff, all that stuff, or bodybuilding, or you come over here and everything they had for anyone over that age was chair yoga and stretching. And I was like, there's nobody talking about this gap, this period of time when, you still have a life ahead of you. And you should be able to get in shape. You should be able to lose the weight, and you should be able to restart. No one was talking about it. And so I said, well, I can't hire a coach. I'm traveling too much. I'll look for an online coach. There were no online coaches. This was in 2013.
Okay.
I'm like, that's kind of crazy. There were coaches for bodybuilding. So if you're working on your posing for bodybuilding, there were coaches that would sit there and watch video and give you pointers. If you were working on your nutrition for bodybuilding at the very end, the cutting and all the stuff, there were coaches doing that. And there were some powerlifting coaches. That's all I was able to find in all the world. So I was like, okay, nobody's here to help me do this. There were no podcasts, there were no books, there were no coaches. So I said, only thing I can think to do was, well, become one. So I went ahead and got my all this most of the certifications that you talked about earlier. Those were a function of figuring out what I needed to do for myself. And so I became a personal trainer to train Allan. And that's
Nice.
all
I
the
like that.
intention I had. That's all the intention I had. Now, I would not recommend that as a path. It's much more expensive. It takes a lot longer to make it happen. But I went through those certifications really quickly because, again, fanatical, obsessive, get it done mindset as I went into it. And it started working. I started getting some traction. And then I realized a lot about myself. And I said, I'm going to work a lot harder if I have a big, hairy, scary goal in front of me. That's how I'm wired. I've since talked to a lot of people and worked with a lot of people, and I've figured out there's about 5 of those different mindsets. So not everybody is inspired by a very hairy, scary goal. They need a different approach. But at the time, that's what I needed. So I signed up for a Tough Mudder with my daughter. I said, "Hey, let's do a Tough Mudder." And so I had about 8 months to get ready for this race. And basically, a Tough Mudder is an obstacle course race. So you're in mud. You're running through an area that's very hard to traverse normally, and you're trying to do it quickly. And they've added like 25 obstacles just to make it fun. Um, and so I was like, okay, I'm not in position to do this right now. I have no business doing this or signing up for this, but I did. I went ahead and I bought our airfare, got our hotels booked, bought the tickets to the thing, had it all organized for November, and now I had to get ready. And so over the course of, basically it was 11 months total, but really most of it happened in that 8 months. I was able to lose 66 pounds of fat and gain 11 pounds of muscle.
That's amazing. And for those listeners who don't know what CrossFit is, can you tell them what CrossFit is?
Okay, CrossFit is this kind of multifunctional exercise program. So you go in, there's like a big, they call it a box instead of calling it a gym, but basically there's instructors in there and they run you through workouts. These are very intense workouts. Basically, they'll do some strength training. They'll do what they call a Metcon, which is basically aerobics times 10. And with equipment running around doing all this stuff. And so it's very intense and it's basically they quote it as being the fittest people on earth because they have a competition each year, the CrossFit Games, where they crown the fittest man and woman on earth. I've come since to figure out that that's actually not real fitness. It's cross fitness. So you're the best CrossFitter in the world, but that doesn't mean that you're the fittest person, because fitness to me is an entirely different thing when we get over 40. And I'll tell you a story. So my grandfather loved golf. Like, I mean, like more than anybody, like loved. Big capital L, lots of O's, loved. Okay. And he played practically every day. He was a salesman. And back in that day, that's how you made deals. They went and they spent the day on the golf course and then they signed the papers, and that was his job, was basically golf. And so he played golf every day, practically every day, until he was 80. And I was there with him and I went to visit. And normally, we'd have lunch and then he'd go off and play golf. Well, one day he wasn't going off to play golf. I'm like, okay, what's going on? He says, well, I can't hit the ball anymore. I don't have the balance. I don't have the strength. I can't play. I said, do you just want to go to the driving range? We'll hit some balls. He's like, no, I can't even swing a club. Okay. Now a lot of people say, oh, well, he's 80. Okay. So it's over anyway. He lived for 15 more years,
There you go.
which means the last 15 years of his life, he didn't get to do the thing he loved the most. He lost it. Now, flash forward 10 years, he's 90 and he can't make it from his chair to the bathroom in time. He realizes he has to go. It's already too late. So he has to call down to the care desk. He's in his little assisted care apartment. He has
Mm-hmm.
to call down the care desk because he can't clean himself up.
Yep.
Okay. And because he was in that condition, he didn't want people around. He was very embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
So I didn't get to see him the last 5 years of his life. Now,
That's sad. Mm-hmm.
it is. And it didn't have to be that way. I want to be able to wipe my own butt when I'm 105. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
And I think that's when we're aging, that's what it's all about. And you mentioned what CrossFit is about. I used to be a bodybuilder and not the posing competition, but the really put on size competition. And there was nothing functional about that. There was all about aesthetics, getting as big as you humanly possibly can, throw in some poses and pack on more meat basically on your body.
yeah,
And so there's nothing that would help me age well into my 80s and 90s. And also, as you mentioned, the story with the Tough Mudder. I have a similar story about the Tough Mudder where my son said to me, Mom, do you want to do the Tough Mudder? And I had no idea what it was. And I was like, sure, let's go do it. Why not? I'm not that old. I can do a Tough Mudder. Holy smokes. It whooped my buttski. Like you
yeah,
said, 15-foot obstacles, dropping down the tower in freezing water, eating jalapeno peppers. I mean, it's the craziest thing, but we all got a little orange headband saying Tough Mudder. I know, I'm not sure if you got that too.
yeah, yeah. But what I got that was even more important than that was okay. So I didn't want to just do the Tough Mudder. I wanted to do the race with my daughter. I wanted to enjoy it
Mhm.
and not kill myself to get this thing done. So the fitness level that I felt I needed to get to was a little bit further over the edge of what most people in their mid 40s would have or need at that time. And so we're coming up on the next to the last obstacle, and it's electricity.
Oh,
And
yeah, I
what they
remember
have
that.
is they have this little, there's a like a little, they've dug this hole and there's all this water and mud. And it had ruts in it. So you couldn't just run through it. There you had to watch your footing. And there's these dangling wires. And so as we're running up on it, I see this guy get hit by electricity as he's going through, and he falls face forward in the mud water. And just instinctively, he popped up and he got hit again and went down again. So there's about 20 or 30 guys standing there watching this obstacle, watching this thing happen, and they're terrified. You could just feel the tension in the air with these folks. We're coming up on it, and my daughter's like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Just run around them." She's like, "We're not going to wait." I'm like, "No, we're not going to wait." So she goes around the left side, I go around the right side, and we come back together. And just before we get to the obstacle, I grab her hand, and we're able to run through the whole thing.
Nice. Nice.
And we finish holding hands. Um,
Oh,
Now, here's a little trick, kids. Electricity can get displaced. So when there are two people holding hands, that's more body mass for that amount of electricity. We felt them hit us, but not like the guy who went in alone.
mhm.
So if you're going to go in and there's electric obstacle, hold someone's hand or multiple people's hands, and you'll be less likely to get knocked on your face. But the cool thing
You
was,
know,
go ahead.
I know because I crawled through that. I had the same observation that you guys did, but I didn't know about the hand holding. I should have met you before that.
Yeah. I knew it
But
back. I majored in physics was one of my initial when I was going to school. So I just kind of had a little bit of understanding of some of those things. I wasn't 100% sure it was going to work. It was still an experiment, but it did get us through. But the cool
yeah.
thing was finishing the race, holding my daughter's hand. And then I look back at where I was 11 months before then. And it was almost seemed impossible that that would be happening 11 months later. But it
Mhm.
reminded me of like there's three core moments that interactions I've had with my daughter that are like kind of these magic moments. I don't know if you have any of those or with people like you just have a magic moment where you're like, okay, I'll always remember this feeling. So the first one was when my daughter was born. She was born OP, which means she was face up, which is a form of breech, but not a
Okay.
terrible breech. Okay, so there didn't have to be a C-section, but they did have to use the tongs to pull
Mm.
her out. So she was a little disoriented. She didn't do very well on her first aptitude test, which is normal. And so they set her aside over to the side to warm her up and get her more relaxed. And then I'm standing there. She reaches over and she grabs my pinky. Her little fingers just wrapped around my pinky. Okay. Um, there's that moment. Then there's the moment of us finishing a Tough Mudder together. And then about 2 years ago, me walking her down the aisle.
Oh,
Now, here's what I know. I'm fairly certain is true. If I had not had that moment where I made that commitment, I would have not gotten those last two things.
hmm.
I
Which
don't know
brings
that I
us
still would have been alive when she got married.
which brings us full circle to the commitment. Why it is so difficult for people to commit. We all want, and we both are fitness coaches, and we both hear it all the time. I just can't do it. I want to. What's your take on that?
Well, there's, you know, I, when I wrote my book, The Wellness Roadmap, I said, okay, weight loss is 50% nutrition, 20% stress management, 20% sleep, and 10% fitness. You're not going to exercise the weight off. You're just not going to do it if you're over 40. I've come to a new conclusion about this pie chart. Those four things are just 10% of the pie chart. What's going on in your head, your mindset, and your the way you look at motivation are 90% of it. So if your head's not straight, it's not going to happen. It's just not. You won't be able to stick to the nutrition plan that you have. You won't be able to stick to the fitness plan. You're not going to really do much to improve your sleep or manage your stress unless you get yourself wired right. And we skip that step. We
Aren't
skip that
we?
step and we start throwing the tactics and strategies at it, like what diet works, what's the best exercise to lose belly fat, you know, how can I get strong fast, how can I do this and make it easy. And so we're not really in the game mentally, and so when things get hard, we check out.
But isn't it that I don't think I disagree a little bit with this when things get hard. I think a lot of people don't even get to that part of it's hard. They're not sure what they should commit to. They see so much on social media that what they should be doing and that what they should look like, that they don't really know themselves and they don't really know to prioritize themselves. And what would that look like? What would that
Right.
even look like to commit to something? You know, if I put Alan in the driver's seat, he's going to give me a program. We all do that. But, and you just tap on it, but nothing happens other than them getting frustrated. What do you think?
To an extent, yes, and particularly a certain style of person. Like I said, I have mindsets. For me, the mindset I had was the big scary goal. Okay, I now
Mm,
call that an atlas person, and not the atlas of the god carrying the planet, but the actual paper atlases we used to have. You know, the felt pen drawing the route. Uh, An
yes.
atlas needs to know the destination. They need something in front of them that they're charging toward. That was my mindset at that point. But one of the first mindsets I had to get through was kind of what you're talking about there. One of the things you're talking about there was okay, I had to realize I had put everybody else's obligations in front of my own. I was a co pilot and I had to take care of everybody else. And then there was no energy left for me. So that's another one. Another one is tires, and tires detraction. So, if you're going and you lose traction, you slide back down the hill and you're in the ditch. And that's a tires person. If they don't see traction, they quit. And so they're the ones that like the little circles on your phone or marking on a calendar every time you do your workouts or keeping a journal. They do very well with that.
Mhm.
Another one is what I call windshield. And this was a big one for me. I remember being like my daughter. I remember being super uber fit. And so every time I tried to do something, I'm looking in the rearview mirror thinking that's what I should be. That's what I should do. And that never really worked out very well for me.
The
So
shoulds.
Yeah,
Hmm.
someone who's a windshield person needs to realize you're sitting right here in this seat, and the windshield's right here in front of you. And if you spend your time looking through the rearview mirror, you're not going anywhere.
Right.
Okay. So you have to look forward. And that works for someone who was super fit before. It also works for someone who maybe was not so fit when they were younger and they still think of themselves as a fat kid, you
Hmm.
know? And so they have this mindset of who they were, which is keeping them from getting where they should be. So as soon as they can
Yeah.
just turn their head and say, this is the seat, this is where I am right now. That's my windshield. Go this way. But the main one in which what you really talked about a minute ago was what I call pedals person. So a pedals person is someone who will start with something. They'll say, okay, this diet looks interesting, or this exercise program looks interesting, and they'll press the gas. And 2 weeks later, they haven't seen the change they wanted. I expected to lose 20 pounds this month. I haven't lost any. It's already 2 weeks. So they press the brake
Hmm.
and they look for something else. And then they go do that. So that's a problem with too much information for them is there's so many different ways to eat. There's so many different exercise programs. There's
Yeah.
so many different gurus saying this or saying that. And some of it's even counteracting each other. It's like, well, should I be eating saturated fat or not? Should I be eating sugar or carbohydrates or not? And so they're just really confused. They start something, but they don't stick with it long enough to really
Hmm.
see anything really happen and they quit. And so that the person that's setting the battles, if they would just sit there and say, "Okay, I'm going to try the Mediterranean diet. It sounds reasonable. There's some evidence that it's the best diet. I'm going to do it, but I'm not just going to sit there and say I'm going to just start it. I'm going to do it for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and see what it does. If you
Yeah.
give it the time and it's a reasonable thing, it's probably going to work for you. But more than anything, with all of these, is really sitting back and saying, what will work for me because I couldn't be a vegan. I just could not.
Like meat.
I also cannot just be a carnivore because I also like vegetables and fruit. And so if I try to do something super super restrictive, I know I won't be able to do it forever. And so people say I'm going to do this thing and they do and they lose the weight or most of it and then they say well now I can go back to eating normal instead of
Hmm.
making that the new normal. Okay. And
Very good
so,
point.
they'll do things. And so the reality is we got to get our head right. What does our head tell us? Well, it tells us when things are, scary and it actually wants us to conserve energy. It doesn't want us to do workouts. We're very lazy animals for a good reason. We need that energy. And when food was scarce, you're not out just running around dancing, jumping around, doing silly things as much unless you have a good quality quantity of food. And so we have to get our head straight before we move forward. So the five mindsets that I just kind of went over, Atlas, tires, windshield, pedals, and Copilot. I have a quiz on my website. You can go to 40plusfitness.com/quiz, and you can take the quiz, and it'll tell you what your primary type was. You
Which
have
I
to
think is
tackle that one.
really, I think it's really important to know because some people really don't know what they are. And like, I like the example of I'm starting a diet, I do it 2 weeks, and I didn't lose the 20 pounds that I thought I was going to lose. So, what's the problem? And most people say, I'm the problem, it's me, or this program is
Yeah,
just not for me. But they
right.
have even given it a real good try.
Yeah. So what I found was when I look back at my journey, I didn't know this when I was doing this. I got very lucky in that I didn't realize I was a co-pilot person and my work was everything. It was taking
Mhm.
everything I had, all my energy. And so I wasn't applying any energy to myself. So the commitment allowed me to overcome that and say, I need to ask for permission to do my workouts when I want to do my workouts.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that I'm making time to do the things I need to do to take care of myself. And that was contrary to me feeling like I had to do everything for the job first. So I just stepped past that. Once I did, I was in good shape. But then I found out, okay, now I'm a windshield person, meaning I'm trying to do, this workout that, yes, I could do that when I was 29. I
Mm-hmm.
can't do it when I'm 46, you know? And so re-gauging myself and saying, okay, windshield right there, seat right here. Okay, go. And getting myself back into that. The next one I ran into was tires because I would do a workout for a few days and then Friday would come along. I'd go out with friends, have a few beers, and then the whole weekend was shot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And sometimes I didn't even go back on Monday. It's like, I'll catch up next Monday. And so
Next
that was
Monday.
that was my tires thing. Once I had all of those kind of lined up, which happened relatively quickly for me, then it was like, okay, I'm going to do this Tough Mudder with my daughter. I know that's going to drive me. And that was
Mm-hmm.
the Atlas that came out. So for the most part, right now, I'm an Atlas, but every once in a while, I find myself doing a tires thing.
But isn't
Okay.
that, Alan, isn't that something that is normal, which I relate to motivation? And we want to talk a little bit about motivation and what it is and what it's really not.
Yeah.
That you just slide back and that's okay. You are the windshield wiper and for a while, and that's okay. But what are your thoughts around motivation?
Okay. I personally think that we do motivation wrong. Okay, because you'll hear people use words like uh you'll hear them say words like willpower.
Uh-huh.
I have no willpower. We make a resolution and we fail 3 weeks in. It's like, well, okay, 92% of people fail. So I'm sort of normal. Okay, that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have someone who's actually in good shape just saying, you just need discipline. You just need discipline. Well, the word discipline actually means punish. Okay. You don't need punishment. Okay. I can just tell you right now, you don't need punishment. So we've got a new paradigm I want you to think about. I want you to think about with motivation. Motivation isn't something that just shows up, it's not a magic force that's either there or not there. You get motivation by doing something first. You have to earn motivation. That might sound a
Explain.
little paradoxical. Yes.
Explain.
Okay. So here's the thing.
Give an
There,
example.
well, there are two styles, if you will, types of motivation. There's the outside or extrinsic version, external, that's called accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then there's the internal or intrinsic that's called self efficacy. Okay. Now, the easiest way to do this is the accountability because there's two layers in this model as well. There's leader level and then there's social level. So accountability at a leader level is hiring a coach, having a manager. When you're at your job and there's a manager and he says, I want this report by Thursday night. Guess what you have by Thursday night? The report, because you have
Report.
the accountability of a leader telling you this is what you need to do. Coach is a very similar thing. Coach says, okay, here's you've agreed to these goals for your eating. You've agreed to these goals for your movement. I expect you to do them. And then you do them because you have that accountability at the leader level. That's very easy to get. You hire the coach. So this is really quick, easy there. Okay. The next layer is a social layer. And this is where like you join a run club or you go to a spin class or even a CrossFit box, you do the things with those people and you begin to think of them as they're your peers. A lot of people think peer pressure is a bad thing. Well, only a bad thing if you had bad peers.
Right.
If you have
Absolutely.
good peers around you, peer pressure is a great thing because you're showing up for your workouts, and you're showing up for the stuff. You're joining groups and you're now living their lifestyle. You now are associated with better people. Like the Jim Rohn quote, you are the sum of the people you spend the most time with. That's the concept. But they're holding you accountable. They're the 5 o'clock CrossFit group. They show up at 5 o'clock. You show up at 5 o'clock. It's what you do. Okay, that accountability is pretty easy because you either hire the coach or you join the group or both. Better, both.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the accountability. Now, the only problem with accountability is that it's fleeting, meaning it could go away. You get through with your sessions with your coach and you don't want to pay him anymore. Accountability's gone. Okay, the group starts to move around, move away. You said, okay, I'm gonna go for a walk with my sister every afternoon after work, and then your sister twists her ankle or something comes up and she's not coming. And I don't know how many times I've had someone, well, I couldn't walk. I'm like, well, okay, why couldn't you walk? Well, my sister didn't go. Like, but you're okay. It's like, yeah, my sister twisted her ankle, but
Yeah.
your ankle's just fine. Well, yeah, again, the accountability was gone. Poof. Okay. So the self-efficacy is harder, but it's more powerful.
Hmm.
So at the leader level is you, and it's you being the CEO of your own health. It's you making management decisions. Now, inside a business, what managers do is they set up processes so it's easier to succeed and harder to fail. So they remove friction from the things you want to do and they add friction to the things you shouldn't be doing. And so if you're the leader of your own health, you start doing those things. So an example I can give you is I would show up for my workouts. Like I wanted to work out during the day and I lived a good ways away from work. So the gym was right next to my office. And so I would get my bag out to change and I'd realize I forgot something. Sometimes it was a t-shirt, sometimes it was the shorts, maybe the socks. Not a big problem. I mean, so I wouldn't do the workout. One day it was one shoe.
Oh God.
I don't even know. I again to this day have no idea how only one shoe ended up in my bag, but the other shoe did not. But I realized that I was self-sabotaging at some level. That I didn't know how or why, but for some reason that was happening, and I was not doing the workouts as a
Yeah.
result. So I said, okay, what do I need to do? Well, process. Have a checklist. I printed it all out and I laminated it. And now when I sit down, when I brush my teeth each evening, I pull out the list from top to bottom. Everything goes in there. The list goes in there. I put my gym bag right by the door so I would have to literally step over it on my way
Yeah.
out. Okay. I never missed another workout
Yeah.
because I
That's
reduced the
also,
friction of doing
it's
my
also
workouts.
when you, I don't know if you read Tom Cleary's the Atomic Habits. He talks about this too, how to remove the friction and what to do in order to be successful, whether it's fitness, nutrition, or your everyday life.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what you said, pack your bag the day before, have that list, put it all in. You're ready to go. No excuses.
Yeah. And on the nutrition side, maybe you say, okay, I'm tired of, I get, in the evening, I get, watching something, I get bored or whatever, and I start snacking on stuff. Well, if you remove all the crap from your cupboard, now if you want those cookies, you've got to actually put your shoes back on, get back in your car and drive to the grocery store to buy the cookies. Most people are not going to do that. So you
Right.
added friction to doing something you didn't want to do. So as the manager of yourself, you start doing these self-management things, making it easier and easier to do the things you want to do and harder to do the things that you don't want to do.
Yeah.
What that helps you do then at the social level is you begin to develop habits and values. Okay. And eventually you would begin to identify as that healthy, fit person. The easiest example I can give you is a runner. Okay. So imagine person decides they're going to go for 30-minute walks after work. They start doing the walks, they're consistent, they're getting faster, they're getting easier. They decide, okay, I'm going to add a jog to it. So that's the jog to the fence post, jog to the stop sign. They're adding a little bit of jogs to their walk. And then over time, they realize they're jogging more than they're walking. And they get the idea that they'll do a 5K. So they sign up for the 5K, maybe with some friends or people they now know, and they go and they do the 5K and they have a great time. They've got the t shirt, it's exciting. They enjoyed themselves so much, they're ready to sign up for another one. And now they're buying the shorts and the shoes and the socks and the things, and they identify as a runner. So when the alarm goes off in the morning and a runner gets up, what do? They go for their run. They don't think about it. They don't fret about it. They don't re-hit the alarm. It's just what they do. In fact, a runner, if they injure themselves and can't run, they're frustrated by not being able to do the thing they are. So their values and habits have completely aligned around being a runner. So they run. So if you have feet in all four of those quadrants, you've got a coach to hold you accountable. You've got a group, a social network around you of people who are help hold you accountable. You are self-managing to make it easier and easier to do the things. Then you build the habits and the values. You now identify as that individual. So if you identify as a person who eats healthy food, you're not out eating crap. If most of
Yeah.
the people you hang around with are eating healthy food, then you feel
Going
more
back to
comfortable.
the runner example, you just described me. You literally described me. I used to run till about 2 years ago, and now I have a lot of arthritis and a torn meniscus, and I had to give up running, which is definitely, like you said, I identified as a runner. And I would do exactly the things you said. I have a group that I met at 5 every 3 times, twice a week for long runs and short runs. We would get together. I eventually became a running coach as well. So I coached in Montgomery County in Maryland here, the local running group. But it was exactly, we had a plan, we had a coach, we had accountability, we had our buddies, and we got the t-shirts and the bling after each race, which is like,
And you cheered each other
yay.
on, and you cheered each other on coming across the finish line, and you felt
Yeah,
connected, and
yeah,
you identified as that. And so you see, when you're in that place, you are always motivated. It's unlimited.
yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, when we're talking about for our listeners, for someone who's struggling to make health a priority, how do they empower themselves, achieve their goals? And we touched a little bit on everything, align with their values, and prioritize what matters truly to their journey. And again, how do they ignite their spark, like you ignited your spark with your daughter? And it's like, ooh, CrossFit, man,
Mm.
I need to do the Tough Mudder. What can they do to help with steps that they
Yeah.
can do?
So when I look at the word commitment, I break that down into two things. Okay. The first one is a why. Why does this matter? Okay. And with me, initially, I thought it was just I want to have a particular type of lifestyle with my daughter. When I
Mhm.
got a little bit deeper into that concept, what I actually came out with was I wanted self respect and I wanted her respect.
Okay.
Okay. And I think you can see how emotionally deep that is when you're talking about wanting to be respected by the people you love the most
Yeah.
and being respected by yourself. Okay. So for me, that was my why, my real why was I wanted that respect, being and who I was needed to be. Now, the vision, which is the second piece, so the why and the vision was initially, yes, I want to do the things that my daughter's doing with her in her way, not my way. And so that was the initial push. I've gotten past that and now there's other things, but I want to be a participant in my grandchildren's lives, not a spectator. I don't want to be sitting in a rocking chair when they're playing on the floor. I want to be crawling on the floor with them. When they're doing whatever crazy thing teenagers and young adults are doing, which I'll be close to 80, I want to be ready to do those things.
Hmm.
Okay. So, yeah, I expect for myself, my vision is that I'm the crazy 80-year-old out there doing whatever they're doing as part like a Tough Mudder thing then. Okay. So I'm a participant in their lives. Okay. And then the other side of it is I want to be independent. I want to be capable. And I have a wife, she's close to my age. I want to be there for her. So where I live right now on this island, we do have an ambulance, but it's not going to get here. So it's better for me to just know that I can pick her up, put her in the car, and get her to the emergency room if I need to.
Hmm.
So those, I'm not going to call them obligations. I'm just going to say who I am
Yep.
requires me to be in the condition that I need to be in to be the caretaker, not the not the caregetter.
Get her. Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
and so I want to be able to take care of my wife. I want to be able to take care of my kids. I want to be able to take care of my grandkids. I want to be able to take care of my mom. And like I said, my grandfather lived until he was in his mid 90s, and it was not a pleasant way to go. My father is 80 years old right now,
Okay.
And he's fine. He's in better shape than my grandfather was. He doesn't play golf, doesn't love golf like that, but he's okay. Um, and so it's just that whole thing of I want to live my life on my terms. I know I'm going to age, but I'm going to age on my terms. I'm going to live and be independent as long as I possibly can. And yes, when I'm 105, I will be able to wipe my own butt.
I love it. You can do it. I give you the toilet paper because I'm planning on that too, man. One of my clients that I see in person, I have a brick and mortar studio too, aside from Pursue Your Spark here in Maryland. And my oldest client is currently 98. And his wife always says he's lost his brain. He has like zero short-term memory. And she's 94 and she drives him to the studio. I'm always like, crossing my fingers, biting my nails, and I'm checking, making sure that they get there. And, they're coming with their walking sticks and their canes and all of this, but they're getting their buttski in and
Yeah,
being as strong as independent, as you said earlier, as long as possible. It's such an inspiration.
it is. And, my oldest client right now is 78. But she's doing all she can to keep herself in as good a shape as she possibly can. She's got a lot of things that are not in her favor. She's vision impaired, and so that makes it
Mhm.
a little bit more difficult. Which is why she wants a coach, is that someone that can talk her through and get her moving in her way, not my way, not someone else's way, but her way. And again, that's a mindset thing. When I
Yeah.
see someone who's struggling like that, or I know I would be, for them to still be pushing to remain as strong and healthy as they can,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have an excuse.
And I also think, Ellen, I also think in that sense that I want to find a person that I think I am, that's kind and compassionate towards that age group with, like you said, the not hearing, the not seeing, the not moving as well as anybody younger their age, is that we find somebody that's as compassionate and as kind towards us and guides us as we can't help ourselves at some points anymore. And we need that extra little help from somebody else.
Yeah. And again, that's another reason to look at coaches, is that, I kept breaking myself every time I tried to train, initially when I was trying to train, because I had no idea what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing. Um, but unfortunately, most of the people who were, they were either on one camp or the other. It's like, okay, chair yoga, stretching, that's all you should be
Mhm.
doing, and then the other camp is, no, let's go do a box gym workout with a CrossFit and swinging kettlebells and toes to bar and burpees, and yeah, then go for a run. That I could do it once I got myself in shape, but I wasn't in shape to do that in the
To
first
that to
place. So
begin with, right?
so,
So, Alan,
understanding where you are, and then from there, and a good coach can help you get the most out of what you are capable of doing today and get you further. I had a client one time, and when she hired me, she says, "Look, I don't like to exercise." And she said, "In fact, I get winded walking to my car."
uh-huh.
I said, "Okay." So start where she is, right? And I said, "Okay, tomorrow when you walk to your car, I want you to do one lap around the car." I said, "I know that'll feel silly, but just do one lap around the car." She did it. And the first day, she said, "That was really hard."
Yeah,
And I'm like, okay. 2 or 3 days in, she's like, "Okay, it's getting easier." I'm like, "Okay, tomorrow, 2 laps." Within a few weeks, she could go out in the neighborhood and walk around for 15, 20 minutes.
yeah.
Okay, so you can always do something. It's one of the wonderful, wonderful things. We have this beautiful gift. It's a human body. It's a machine we live in that is capable of healing itself. It's capable of improving. And
Mhm.
all we have to do is give it what it needs to heal and improve. And that's
Yeah.
movement, proper nutrition, sleep, and stress management. If we're
And
doing those
sunshine.
things, yeah, if we're doing
And
those
sunshine.
things for our body, it will heal, it will get better. And it's just this amazing, amazing gift that I think a lot of people forget
Mhm.
what they have.
Yeah.
And
Ellen, What are you most excited about right now in your life?
Well, you know, I'm helping so many people with my own coaching, and I love that every single day when I'm able to help someone, hold them accountable. They're doing the things they've always wanted to do or needed to do and knew they should be doing, but then didn't. And then the accountability gets them going, and I see them building that self-efficacy. That always makes me feel good. Now, another thing that I've done recently, I started coaching coaches. So I'm with this group that's a mentorship, and we coach other coaches. And so what that's allowed me to do is to work with dozens and dozens of other coaches that are basically doing the same thing. So instead of touching however many people I can touch in my lifetime, I'm now mentoring coaches as an exponential
Hmm.
of what
That's
my
exciting.
capacity would be. Yeah. So, it sounds weird coaching coaches, but by coaching them and helping them build a solid practice, and
Yeah.
now they're helping people lose weight, get fit, regardless of what their audience is, what they're working with is. I mean, I work with 40 plus. Some of my other clients do as well. The coaches do, but some of them are
Yeah.
across the board. They do this, they do, but they're all helping people get more healthy and fit, and I just love it.
I love it. Allan, thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing all about commitment and feeling good and doing a better job of committing to our own health.
Thank you.